Commission meeting for the Village of Vernon Hills. We have a roll call, and it is 7:31 in the evening now.
Commissioners Baloo,
Present.
Cotton,
Here.
Hesner,
Here.
Heidner,
Here.
Mulcrone,
Here.
Gorig,
Here.
Chairman Morris.
Here. All right. This evening, we have a public hearing, which is case 20-11, which is an application requesting pursuant to the village ordinances, 6 individual items. One is approval to amend ordinance 2013-14, authorizing revisions to a special use permit permitting a planned unit development for mixed-use residential on the property. And the property we are referring to is a portion of the Hawthorne Mall Shopping Center and adjoining parking lot. Secondly is amendment of the same ordinance, granting certain variations related to zoning and signs. Third, amendment to ordinance 2013-13, granting preliminary and final site and plan approval. Fourth, amendment of the same ordinance, granting preliminary and final landscaping approval. Fifth, amendment of the same ordinance, granting preliminary and final architectural approval. And finally, amendment of the same ordinance, granting preliminary and final approval of the plat of subdivision. Who's going to speak on behalf of the petitioner in this case, please?
Good evening. I'm John Michelle, Senior Vice President of Development with Centennial Real Estate, the owner of Hawthorne Mall.
Okay, I see you have a variety of other people with you. Are
We
they
do,
going to speak
yeah.
at all?
Pardon?
Are they going to speak also this evening?
A number of them are. I'm going to introduce a couple of them, and they'll be introduced in a couple different groups, if that's okay with the commission.
Actually, what we'd like to do is if we can swear everyone in
Sure.
together.
Sorry.
Why don't you introduce everybody and have everyone stand and so we can figure
Okay.
it out?
Sam Whitebread.
Okay, we have to stop you immediately. If you turn from the microphones, you need to use the handhelds.
Does that work?
No,
Does that work?
doesn't seem so.
Hello? Hello?
There you go. Okay, now you work. All right, thank you.
Okay. Sam Whitebread, Centennial Real Estate. Justin Pillay, Focus Development. Mike Rollison, Tortigalis Partners. Vicky Lee, Focus Development. Vic Howell, Focus Development. Mickey Walker, Kimley Horn. Rory Fansler, Kimley Horn. Hal Frankie, Meltzer, Pulitzer.
Close enough.
Daniel Gross, Kimley Horn.
Okay, we'd ask everyone's going to speak if you could raise your right hand and swear or affirm that this testimony you're about to give before this commission of the Village of Vernon Hills shall be the truth. Yes. Okay, thank you very much. You are now on.
That was more than I was prepared for. It's good I know
It was a
all the people on our team, though, and there's more, so. Well, thanks again. Apologize for the confusion. Once again, I'm John Michelle, Senior Vice President of Development with Centennial Real Estate. We're the owners of the Hawthorne Mall. Here tonight with Sam Whitebread, our VP of Tenant Coordination and Development, who you have all previously met. Very excited to be here before you all this evening. As you are aware, tonight's meeting represents a major milestone in the history of the Hawthorne Mall as we formally embark on the most significant redevelopment of the campus since it was developed in the early 1970s. As we all know, we are living in unprecedented times. In addition to the risks we are facing on a daily basis, but not more importantly, the retail industry is undergoing an unparalleled paradigm shift in how consumers are shopping and spending their hard-earned dollars. The combination of the economic forces associated with consumer shifts to online shopping with the reality of COVID-19 have created a challenging environment for both mall owners and their tenants. This evening, we're going to share with you how Hawthorne Mall plans to evolve towards its mixed-use future and retain its position as one of the village's most important commercial assets and one of Lake County's dominant points of destination. I have been redeveloping enclosed mall assets for my entire career. I was specifically brought in by Centennial 18 months ago to help lead the effort here in Vernon Hills. We have assembled a best-in-class partnership and an extremely talented design team to help design and implement an amazing redevelopment project on the Hawthorne Mall campus. Tonight, we will formally and comprehensively present our vision for Hawthorne 2.0. Centennial will be pursuing its plan to create a unified and newly refined project while continuing to operate the existing mall. It is important that Centennial undertake these changes while continuing to offer the exciting options that presently exist at the mall, the interior portions of which have been renovated and rejuvenated since last year. With that said, I'm excited and proud to introduce all of you to our partners, Focus Development and Atlantic Residential Partners, who are all well known to the village as the developers of the residential component of the very successful Melody Farms mixed-use development. Focus is here tonight represented by Justin Pillay, Vicki Lee, and Vic Howell, and Atlantic is here in spirit represented by Mitzi Jones and Matthew Shashow. Once again, I'd like to thank you again, let you know how excited I am about this presentation, and it's a really big deal for us as the mall owners. Hope it's a big deal for you and hope it's well received. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Vicki Lee with Focus Development. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Thank you for having us tonight. I'd also like to extend a big thank you to the village staff who have been working with us tirelessly over the past few months to help us guide us through our process and also answer our many questions. As John mentioned, my name is Vicki Lee. I am Vice President of Development at Focus. As some of you may recall, the partnership with Focus and Atlantic, who developed the Atworth, which is across the street from the mall. Personally, as owners, we believe the Atworth was a success, but mainly because we attribute it to the willingness of the village to create a relationship with us. And tonight, while we certainly wish to recreate this relationship on the site, we intend to make the site even better in terms of building community and suburban vibrancy. And we intend to do that via enhancing placemaking, enhancing pedestrian experience, but above all, breathing life into what would otherwise be known as a very conventional mall. With us tonight, who will be presenting these ideas, is Mike Rollison, our design architect from Torty Galson Partners, Mickey Walker, Rory Fansler Split, Daniel Grove, our civil engineer, traffic engineer, and landscape architect from Kimley Horn, and also Hal Frank, our zoning attorney from MPS Law. Without further ado, I'd like to bring Mike Rollison up here, who will walk you through the site plan as well as the building elevations, and also address how we've changed the plans to address the comments from several of the Plan Commission members as well as the city staff or village staff.
Good evening. Very excited to be here. Just want to put on the record that I'm smiling under my mask. Here to walk you through the design and the master plan that we've come up with for the Sears parcel. What you're seeing on screen is context with Melody Farm to the east across Milwaukee Avenue and Town Line Road to the south. We'll walk you through some exhibits that give you some rationale about why the framework looks this way. Included in the project is ground floor retail shown in red on both sides of the street, and then some new outward-facing retail for the mall itself shown. I don't know if this is working. Shown here. So Torty Galson Partners became involved and did a bit of a peer review with the previous plan. And we looked at a few different components that we felt, just from our experience of creating these types of environments, that would help to improve the general layout and the framework. First of which was trying to improve the mall visibility from the entrance coming in off Milwaukee. The one that's shown at the bottom of the screen is a critical vista coming into the new mall entrance. We also tried to create a better drop-off sequence that's located at the outward-facing retail of the mall, encouraging pedestrian connectivity, but moreover, trying to create a great placemaking district. Wherever you have retail with housing above, it's really important to create outdoor spaces that are sort of outdoor living rooms for the residents upstairs. So we intentionally dogleg the buildings to create parks and amenity areas along the main street coming in. We also pulled the garage for Phase 1. You see the line designated Phase 1 and Phase 2. We pulled the garage further east such that there's less vehicular traffic at the throat of the mall. We've also looked at the residential courtyards, certainly the one on the AMC side, at closing it and making it a bit more private to the residents who will live there. And then lastly, the previous scheme had a more or less a blank wall on the south side. So we've created a two-sided building there on the south side of our main street. And then you see the Phase 2 building on the left side. So Phase 1 is composed of two buildings that are connected with a pedestrian resident bridge on level 4 across the main street. We studied this and tried to create a dynamic space that still has visibility of the mall signage and the mall tenants on the front of the mall. Phase 2 then is taking over the parking lot that's south of the Phase 1 building, and we're incorporating another parking structure into that building to account for that parking. Phase 2 is connected via essentially a passageway here, so that the Phase 1 and Phase 2 building for residents will be linked, allowing folks to come out and engage the main street. So what you're seeing is the red, the darker shaded red are what we anticipate being restaurant users, most of the end caps, and then the lighter shaded pink would be retail shops, and the yellow is basically representing ground floor residential units, and the west side, see if I can, I don't know if you, can you guys see the cursor on what you're,
Yep.
okay, it's hard to see up here, so I apologize. This would be flex units, which would be essentially day one multifamily, two-level units that could be then converted to retail once the market and the leasing can substantiate that. Oops. So we looked at a lot of precedent images to have a dialogue about what these buildings would want to look like. Melody Farm across the street is more of a traditional sort of adaptive reuse. The mall itself is a bit of a blank slate. Since we're taking down the Sears, we can create what we want on that facade. And the image highlighted in yellow really resonated with the design team and the development team in terms of being a quasi-warehouse building with a contemporary bent to it. So we felt that this would work in this area given the context of what's around the property. And in that you see, sorry, my mask is sliding. You see some larger window openings, which will show up in the renderings. And then the notion of an expansive glass, which shows up in a couple of places, both in the Phase 1 and Phase 2 building, to try to go more in a contemporary type of approach with the design. We are not this tall, so the building doesn't look this tall. We are 4 stories instead of 6, but this was the image that we felt resonated most with everyone. In terms of the materials, we looked at a lot of different things, but we came up with a palette that we feel is durable. We've got essentially four
Okay,
different brick
we've
types.
stopped you again. Remember, the rule is you have to use the microphone. See if it works.
Hello?
That one does not.
Hello?
Okay, that one,
You hear it?
I believe so.
So there's essentially a very limited palette that we've used across the buildings. And if you look on the screen, what we've tried to do, since the buildings are large in their length, we've tried to really focus on building increment, which is essentially the amount of facade that you see before a facade change. So we've tried to, as much as we can, break down the scale of the building. So every 40 to 50 feet or so, you have a different facade that you're walking past on the street. So we have a series of 3-story pavilions, some of which are the white brick. We use the red brick, which you'll see in the renderings, for the end caps of the building primarily. And then we use a combination of the fiber cement panels, a dark panel, medium gray, light gray, and the off-white, and then what you're seeing that looks like wood. This is essentially the underside of the soffits. So it's sort of a warm tone as you're walking down the street. So the palette is pretty simple, I would say. But what we've done in the architecture is tried to break it up so that as you're walking, you engage different facades along the way. So in terms of the public realm, I guess I can turn this off. We had a series of images that we looked at, again, precedent images, things that are already built elsewhere that resonated with the team in terms of the environment we were trying to create. So you see landscape, you see hardscape, you see really great places that you want to be, and it's all of those details that sort of come together. It's the pots, it's the lighting, it's the signage, it's all of it coming together to create a great experience for guests and residents alike. And then in terms of placemaking, you'll see we have a sort of a grand plaza in front of the new mall entrance where the Sears stands today. But the notion of great sort of outdoor spilling cafe tables, a rich landscape palette, paving materials, and amenities throughout, not only on the street itself, but within the residential courtyards as well. So this view was up earlier. This is an aerial, as if you're in a helicopter above Milwaukee Avenue, coming over the entrance and looking back toward the new mall front. So on the right side of the image, you see the Phase 1 building with the courtyard. Begin to see some of the architecture, some of the jogs, some of the window treatments, balconies, and so forth. But of note is the large park space that sort of welcomes you in on the north side of the street. As you go back, you'll notice that there are a lot of residential terraces above the retail level on level 3 of the residence. This was a move that was intentional. So the previous scheme had basically a 4-story street wall, and we wanted to provide a little bit of relief. The bump out, if you will, here is the primary residential lobby for Phase 1. And you begin to see the connection bridge between the two buildings. There is a minor lobby for this building that's directly across the street for the South Phase 1 building here. And you begin to see how the parking works within the two buildings in Phase 1 and Phase 2. And then the mall and the plaza and the amphitheater going up to the AMC on the north side. The Phase 1 building, which you'll see in an exhibit here in a moment, we've designed the back of the building as a front. We've also have a couple new colorations that you'll see tonight for that facade, because in phase one, this will be parking lot. So it's really imperative that that acts as a front of a building prior to phase two being constructed. And the other piece of this is, again, a lot of outdoor cafe space spilling out around the restaurants, and some great, placemaking moves with landscape and amenities throughout, and a marquee sign that you'll see in another rendering here in a moment. So this is a view, just to orient you, as if you're in the parking lot at AMC. This is the high side of the split-level parking, looking south, essentially. And if you squint real hard, I think you can see the skyline back here, just for orientation. So a lot of thought went into the design of this space. We think that this is going to be a highly active and programmed space between the multifamily mixed-use project and the new front of the mall. So what we have shown in the rendering is the notion of a temporary stage. We have trellis design elements on either side, and the idea of some pop-up tents, temporary tenting, and food trucks perhaps, to try to create an experience here that really pulls the neighbors out of their apartments, pulls the community, Vernon Hills as a whole together, and really gives a meaningful sort of rally point for activities in the village. So this is the east side of the mixed-use building here, and you're seeing the bridge up at level 4 here. The next view is essentially coming to the T intersection. I think the vantage point is a little bit further in, perhaps. And this really highlights the plaza and the drop-off sequence in front of the mall, the new mall front. And you see the Dave & Buster's in the back. And then these are all new retail tenants that are now outward facing from the mall. So all of these tenants sort of look out onto the plaza, and then the tenants on the near side as well. So this is a very active place within the property, and a transition from the mixed use back to the enclosed mall. Now we're seeing an evening view coming in down the main street, and we think there's some great opportunities for lighting. You see the marquee sign here, the Hawthorne Row sign, which would be illuminated, some strong lighting over the park, and then all the pole lights as well. So lighting is important, creating that ambiance, creating that place that's comfortable in the evening where you don't feel it's too dark, you don't feel it's too bright, but it's kind of just right. And then you see the glow of the new mall facade in the background. This is coming a little bit closer in, and this highlights the multifamily entrance and lobby on the right side. We do have a vertical sign, maybe the notion of a painted sign as well. This would be a marker for the apartment, whatever that name ends up being, of the apartment building. And then also you see some mural, some artwork along the side. This is the entrance into the garage, which has been pushed back further east down Main Street than previous. And this is the protected pedestrian pathway leaving the garage, coming out to the leasing office and down the street. So it's really, you park the car once and you're able to stroll past the shops on your way to the mall, versus the old plan, which had the garage much closer to the mall, therein kind of missing the shops if you're going to the mall. And then you see, again, lots of landscape, lots of pots, some great pedestrian scale light poles, and you begin to see the terraces up above. This terrace here in particular is a community terrace for the residents. The other terraces on the other side would be private terraces for the residents who rent those units. And this is an evening view, kind of looking back the opposite direction down Main Street. And we think there's a lot of opportunity here to create a great sidewalk experience, be it seating against the storefront, or in this case, seating more against the curb that's protected by flower pots and planters. Other things of note, again, you see the soffits and the canopies, and that was what I was talking about here. That would be this material with recessed downlights, and that's common throughout the project. Tenant blade signs as well, located here. Great storefront signage, and really just trying to create an active sidewalk, one that's populated, one that can have cafe, flipboard signs, and a very rich environment with plenty of seating along it. So we switch now to phase 2. So for orientation, this is out here would be Milwaukee Avenue. This is the main street coming in. So this is really an aerial from the corner of Town Line in Milwaukee, looking northwest. And this highlights the phase 2 building. So the exhibit earlier that showed the phase 1 versus phase 2 showed that this is a surface parking lot until phase 2 is built. So in phase 2, again, we take the front side, which really becomes a courtyard experience once this is built. And this little drop-off sequence here is for the phase 2 building. And you notice the entrance to the phase 2 multifamily product is very similar to the entrance to phase 1. So there are cues along the way for folks who are trying to navigate. Obviously, there will be wayfinding and signage as well. But we thought it important to try to create architecture that didn't feel like it was two different projects, but something that was more holistically designed. In this image, you see again some of the recall from the precedent image that I shared earlier with the large glass openings. Many of the units will have balconies. And then this is a separate, it's not fully enclosed, but a separate quasi-enclosed courtyard for the phase 2 building, which would have amenities very similar to the courtyard in phase 1, meaning swimming pool, barbecue areas, and we've also included a dog run back here between the two buildings. So this is a sort of a snapshot looking at project in full completion with both phase 1 and phase 2, all 3 buildings being complete. Now we're going to turn around a little bit further. So this is more of the entrance coming in from Town Line Road. Again, the use of the red brick, the more traditional look, but with larger warehouse openings on the corner of the building located here. This is the drive lane coming into the new mall drop-off located here. So we have 2 slides here. This is essentially showing what was previously submitted. We heard from a coloration standpoint that the look of this facade was perhaps a little too gray, a little bit underwhelming. So I'll flip back and forth so you can see the change. It's a little bit subtle since it's from the same vantage point. But what we've done is we've updated, we've added a lot more of the lighter color hardy panel to get it to pop a little bit, which I think plays off of the darker gray hardy board or fiber cement and the red brick nicely. So it has been sort of freshened up, updated a bit to have a little bit more punch, a little bit more contrast as well. And, okay. And I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening. Additional concerns that we had heard from village staff as well as additional commission members was how is trash pickup handled within these different units? So focusing in the Phase 1 South building, so the south side of Main Street, looking on the east side of the property. The left side of your screen is the previously submitted version, and the right side is the new version. Our plan is to, sorry, finding my mouse. Our plan is to have trash exit the building. There is a proposed sidewalk along this back side, and have trash pickup during the Phase 1 condition be in the Phase 1 parking lot to the south. In a similar configuration for the same building during a Phase 2 condition, we would actually swap the trash exit to the building and have it exit to the main street and have that trash pickup be during off hours from the main street to allow so that vehicles can access this area. One additional concern that we had heard was at the main entrance off Milwaukee Avenue. Milwaukee Avenue is on the right side of your screen, and the main entrance as it connects into Ring Road. For context, the access point off Milwaukee Avenue would be a free-flow movement that would continue down Main Street to allow for the most vehicle access into the site and direct vehicles towards the main mall and the Plaza area. The north, west, and south conditions are all stop conditions. Hearing the concern of how far back the previous stop sign was and the stop bar on the south leg, we've worked with village staff to create a channelized right turn lane to make the ideal condition and still and place the stop bar to allow for moving vehicles to make a left turn as needed onto Ring Road. And with all the things that we've heard today, we ask for your recommendation for revisions to the special use permit to grant a PUD modification, the variation to the zoning ordinance and sign code identified in the staff report, as well as preliminary and final site plan approval for Phase 1, Phase 2, and the main mall plaza, as well as preliminary and final landscape and architecture for the same elements. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from your standpoint at this juncture?
That'll conclude the presentation from us.
Okay. Any questions from anyone on the commission? Jeff?
I just want to say I think the project's fantastic. I love the pedestrian experience you've created, not only for the mall, but for the new residents and people visiting the new little main street there. I love all the terracing of the, just from the ground up, and then the private terraces for the apartments. I think that's great. It's going to be a phenomenal experience for those residents. You've got the two different private courtyards for people who want a little bit more privacy. Even the terracing from the theater down, to the little band shell. I mean, there's all these little nuances that are really going to make this project successful. And I think as a village, we're pretty lucky to have this here. It's probably the nicest project we've ever seen, and probably also in the county, probably and beyond around here. So, I really also love all the materials, all the different textures. You have multiple textures in the bricks, and the different siding colors, and they all seem to work really well together. There's just one little thing. The bridge. I know it's like a box steel truss of some sort, but it would be really cool if you would look at how to integrate it a little bit more. Right now, it just seems to be kind of floating between the buildings. Maybe if it was engaged, I don't know, with some kind of steel truss or something below it, just to make it look even better than it already is. That's it.
I just have a question. The Phase 2 courtyard of the apartment, it's not completely enclosed. Does that mean anybody can walk in there? You need to speak in a microphone, unfortunately. I mean, if it's going to have a swimming pool and other things, that was just
The intent would be to actually have a gate, a private gate.
Okay,
That would be,
that works.
yeah. It would definitely be secure with fob access.
The other question I have is maybe for Mike. You know, this is amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
It's exciting. Is there a way that at some point, there can be something built to connect this with Melody Farms without having to get in your car and drive over or try to run across Milwaukee?
Well, one thing we do have in place is something that we contemplated at the time of the Melody Farm development, was connectivity between the malls.
Right.
At Ring Road and at the access drive adjacent to Denny's right now, those intersections aren't making any sense. At the time of the Melody Farm development, we required that an escrow account be created, and an amount that I think is 100 or 150,000 was deposited into that account that the village holds, so that in the future, when the mall redevelops, which they're doing now, that money can be used to reconfigure those intersections, so there's traffic and pedestrian movements between those intersections in a more logical way. So that is something right now our village engineer is working on approvals through IDOT in concurrent with the development that's being presented tonight.
What about and this is probably really expensive, some type of pedestrian bridge that can take the people over without having to get in their car?
It would be expensive, and when you think of there's a couple things. The ADA kind of gets in the way of that compliance when you think about either the installation of an elevator on each side or trying to keep the pitch in compliance with ADA requirements. It takes up so much land space, it becomes impractical. And then, yeah, the cost involved too would be quite steep.
Well, and as I recall, the previous owner of the mall was not very open to a lot of different things, and that's connecting to their neighbors and everything else, but it sounds like that's much better now. And aligning the roads and everything else.
Yep.
It just seemed they didn't agree to anything.
Yeah, you're going to see a big improvement as
Yeah.
part of this.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Jim?
What is the timing on, what is your projected timing on the phase 1 versus phase 2?
So we'll start demolishing the Sears building and doing the site work at the beginning of next year. Phase 1 should come out of the ground starting in the spring of 2021, complete by the late summer, early fall of 2022. Phase 2 is going to be market-driven, so we'll evaluate how Phase 1 gets absorbed and hopefully start really shortly after the completion of Phase 1. But again, that would be a market decision, and the design elements associated with Phase 1 allow it to stand on its own or to be absorbed into the Phase 2 development. I think having the flexibility to do both has been very important to village staff and to ourselves to create a product that works by itself or together.
And could you go to without the thank you there, could you show this picture again?
Which one?
The picture that we're looking at, without the
overall.
thank you in the middle of it.
Nobody explained to me how to do this. But there's only 2 ways to go. I feel good about what's going on. And I like having Vicky with me. Whoop.
Back one more. There you go. Now, phase 1 is the building on the right. Is it also the first building
So
on the
it's
left?
the building on the right, the entire building on the right, and then it is this leg of building on the left. So the intent of
And show that on the picture on the other side.
the combination is to create the full Main Street for Phase 1. If we didn't build this building, you would have half of a Main Street, and we wouldn't be able to
Okay.
create the place for the retail in
The bridge
particular.
that the other commissioner was concerned with is in phase 1.
Correct.
That's what I was getting to. Okay.
And the primary purpose of it is to allow the residents in this side of Phase 1, call it Phase 1 South, access to the parking garage on Phase 1 North.
Speaking of the parking garage, if I can just ask a quick question. Will the residents have reserve parking?
Yes, they will. It'll be assigned.
So that if that's general parking for the mall also?
The first floor will be parking for the retail.
Oh, got it. And then they'd have to use some type of access badge
There will
or
be a
something
gate,
to
yeah.
get, okay, perfect, thank you.
So is all the tenant parking in garages?
I'm sorry?
Is all the tenant parking in the
Yes.
garages? Okay. And is there any concern from a fire department perspective of restaurants being located underneath the residential area? And I noticed they made some sort of statement that they didn't want to use concrete or something in between the floors.
Well, as far as the fire department has been involved in the technical review process, and they're satisfied that they have access to all sides of the building they need in case of an fire emergency or such. So they're satisfied with access. As far as the building code variations, the village has an amendment. It's not in the international code, international building code. It's a village amendment that's been in place for years that requires non-combustible separation between dwelling units for walls and floor ceilings. And that really the question is, should we consider taking that amendment out? Because in the case of the Oaks and the Atworth and the mixed-use building in the Vernon Hills Town Center, the board approved variations from that requirement, whereby they would still provide the required separation requirements, 2 hour, actually 1 hour, 2 hour rated between dwelling units, but it would be it doesn't have to be of combustible materials. So what they're proposing is consistent with the other developments and would fully comply with the International Building Code. They're really just asking for a variation from our local amendment.
Okay. and the
If I
fire
may,
department said
Commissioner
nothing?
Heidner, your question was more geared towards the retail separation from the residential, is that right?
Yes.
So actually, we're ironing out the details, but it would be a precast construction for the retail portion, and then wood for only the residential portion.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, so it'd be reinforced precast planks, yeah. And then wood on top of that.
And would that not only sound of the restaurants, but odors as well would not permeate through into the residential area?
Absolutely, and we'll have also a back-of house corridor behind the retail too, that'll separate the residential that's behind the retail.
And has also Lake County Public Works reviewed this do they have capacity? I mean, we've just had a hearing for housing development last week, and now we have another one this week. Do they have the capacity to handle all this?
They do, yes. And yes, they have been involved through the whole technical review process.
I think you can go on to
Scott?
somebody else in the meantime.
I want to thank you for the amount of detail and thought you put into this. It's an amazing project. Typically, we don't get to see this much detail and attention to the nuances that make a project really good. And I applaud you all for that. I do have one question that is more of a curiosity point on the common terrace, level 3 on the north building. There's some units, it's like 3002 to 3012. It looks like their back patios may be part of that terrace. And how do they separate, or how does that exist? It's less of it's more of a comment and curiosity than it is, a criticism of any kind.
Yeah, I think there will be a separation between them, whether that's a privacy wall or landscape. I don't know that we've worked out those details yet, but there will be a physical separation such that when you're on your patio as a resident, you have a degree of privacy. But the main thought there with the community terrace is it's a moment in the building up from the lobby where if you happen to live on the courtyard side, which is kind of the quieter, sleepier side, unless there's, people splashing around the pool and that, that you can have a terrace to gather on up above and sort of have that street experience and watch the folks that are shopping, dining outside, and you know, a little bit more of the see and be seen, you know, layers of folks, and also eyes on the street. So the idea there is that, you know, you would have both, so that those couple of units that are there would have their own patio, but it's also dual purpose so that anyone in the building can come out. And I'm not sure what you do at the Atworth with curfew or anything like that.
You know, it's, the point is, you know, you might have some creepy resident that likes to sunbathe, you know, in a Speedo, who's just outside somebody's back window, you know? So I guess that's the point that I'm leading to, that I thought I'd bring up.
Hopefully they're down by the pool and not.
You know, there's creepy people everywhere, but,
And actually, even by the pool, that's the reason why we tend to do Juliet balconies there instead of full balconies, because we don't want people actually just staying there 24/7.
I'm only thinking about the ones on the same level
Sure.
as that terrace. And the terrace idea is just fantastic, especially looking over Main Street. So, you know, you would never want to give that up. But it's just a comment on detail. And because honestly, you've really thought of almost everything here. And that was just one thing that kind of came out.
Thank you for the
So,
comment.
no, but thank you for all your hard work. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim? Jerry?
Can I go back again? Sure. Could you describe the area from the AMC Theater down to, I guess, the new main entrance off of Main Street there? What's going on there exactly?
This image?
Yes.
I don't know, from a landscape perspective, if you'd like to field it that way. But it's essentially, there's a lot of grade to make up there. Not sure of. Sure, if you want to jump
And
in.
I think just a little bit before he jumps in, the overall idea is to create a space where everyone can gather, and multi-purpose space, particularly the bandstand, even a play lot area for when grandkids come over, being able to maybe play outdoor movies and have a seating area. So the area is meant to be multi-purpose and gather everyone from the neighborhood, not only from Hawthorne Mall.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add, just that, you know, the idea is to allow for flexibility so that it can be active and programmed, but then on days when there's no programming, there's still, you know, great flexible spaces. So you see on the right of the image, kind of a blue area where there would be some playground equipment on like a rubberized surface, you know, integrated seating around that and landscape around that, so places where families can gather and their kids can play. The terracing coming down from AMC into the plaza would have two components. The stairs themselves would have some chunkier, you know, double height stairs so that you could have informal seating on kind of this grand staircase. As you see in the image, if it's activated with some kind of event or concert, that could work into that. And then you'd have these terraced lawn areas that would, again, be used, you know, people can gather, sit on them, watch events. And then that staircase leads into kind of a grand promenade straight to this epicenter that you saw in some of the other images, where we would have, you know, some kind of art or sculptural feature, additional seating opportunities. And then the last piece is between that grand promenade and the street on the left-hand side. We've got some lawn panels, again, flexibility for seating, flexibility for programming, as you see in the image, with tents and other elements. So that's a little bit of how that space breaks down. Again, you know, just trying to create some different areas that can be used in different ways throughout the year.
Daniel, do you want to identify yourself just so
Oh, I'm sorry. Daniel Grove with Kimley Horn, landscape architect on the project.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have a copy of the staff report?
Yes.
With you?
Yes.
Since you're asking for variations and we need to have a record of that, if we can just kind of go through those quickly. The first thing we're asking for is a variation on dwelling unit size. We had a substantial conversation, I guess a week ago, on dwelling unit size as it relates to the ordinance. Your proposed one-bedrooms are 38% less than the permitted. The two-bedroom is 25%, and the three bedrooms, which I know are not a lot, are 18%. Can you speak to either A, the necessity for these kind of sizes, or B, the outmodedness, if that's a word, of our ordinance?
So as we've developed many hundreds of units over the past decade, we've come to realize that today's generation requires less space because what they desire more is the amenity space. And they like to be out in the amenity space with their neighbors interacting. And so from also a price point perspective, this allows the younger generation who can't afford the larger units to pay a smaller chunk rent for these smaller units, but yet market size and yet manageable. And you'll see in your packet, I believe, the units have been designed efficiently so that it allows also common area within the units, as in like a built-in desk, a true living room, so that they can actually feel like they have more space.
Okay. You then are asking for purposes of parking, differences in the parking ratios. Do you want to address those as well for both mall, blended, and apartment?
I'll start with the mall. I'll give an introduction, and then I can let Rory come up and go over the details. So I understand that we're asking for a variation for 1.5 per dwelling unit. And based on all of our study, as well as what we built at the Atworth, we found that even what we built at the Atworth was underutilized to the point we weren't leasing a lot of them. And so we've reduced this ratio on this property to accommodate what the market is asking for.
Rory Fansler Split with Kimley Horn. Vicki said it really well. The 1.5 is market-based. So we had provided a parking study that demonstrated kind of what's built in the market of similar character. 2.3 is not what's being built. And as Vicki noted, even those units that are above or below 2.3, but maybe above 1.5, they're not being used. You know, we studied the Atworth and Woodview, Deerfield. Both of those properties are near full occupancy, I believe at 96 and 91% respectively. But even though they're nearly fully occupied, as is currently presented on the screen, their utilization per occupied unit is just above one space per occupied unit. So that's a reflection of the market. It's a reflection of how many people are living in the units. These aren't families with multiple cars. These are predominantly one and two person households.
Is there a cross easement for parking into the mall lots?
Yes, there will be a cross access for parking. There's also a variance for the blended parking ratio for retail and restaurant uses. Currently, the blended parking ratio is 5 spaces per 1,000. We're requesting a reduced parking ratio of 4.41 for phase 1 and 4.16 for phase 2. Those again are market driven. If you've been to the mall recently, it's evident, I mean, maybe pre-COVID, we won't say recently, but pre-COVID, it's evident that the 5 per 1,000 is not what is needed. When you have a mix of uses, people are not going to the mall to go to a single retail tenant and then driving around and parking to go to another retail tenant or a restaurant. The idea with this redevelopment in particular is to park once and create an environment where people can walk and visit multiple uses using one parking space.
Okay, you're also asking for lot 1 and 2, various variances. Do you want to explain those? And also probably tell us, for this purposes, what's the front, side, and rear yard?
Mickey Walker, civil engineer. So the front yard is Ring Road on
Probably
the
just
east
pick
side.
the picture up.
Yes. this will probably do. For this version, the front yard is actually to the south in the smaller map. And then the rear yard is typically along the mall plaza. They slightly vary for each of them. For the ratio of building coverage, we are requesting reliefs for both Lot 1 and Lot 2. Lot 1 is your Phase 1 residential. Lot 2 is your Phase 2 residential and also parking field during Phase 1 condition. Largely, those reductions in the ratio, or the increase in ratio, I should say, is because we're trying to create a more urban environment. We're putting, instead of having a massive parking field, we're trying to park within the garage, so therefore the building coverage is greater. In terms of the setbacks, we've placed landscape beds to the extent possible in order to get the density that we're looking for within the apartment buildings. These landscape beds also include sidewalks for pedestrian connectivity, as well as different amenity spaces, especially along the main street, to allow for more congregation amongst residents. And then in order to create that urban feel, we are asking for a relief for the building height. Per code, we are permitted 2 stories. We're asking for 4 stories to create this density.
What is the height of the mall?
Mike, do you know the height of the mall?
It's a 2-story mall, so the mall is 2 stories. It's going to be lower than the 4-story buildings. I don't know what the floor to roof measurement is, but it is a 2-story mall. The department stores are 2 stories, and you're looking at a 4-story residential building, multifamily building. So
Yeah, I should have looked this up, but I know the AMC
okay.
movie theater is somewhere a little bit above 50 feet is what my memory tells me. And then if they can find the right screen, I think it'll give you a good perspective. What it'll look like, throw the dimensions out, because of the grade change between where the movie theater is and where the development is, the movie theater is going to seem like the tallest, will remain looking like the tallest building on the mall.
right, that's a great point, that the grade of the upper level parking lot and the movie theater is significantly higher than the intersection, the main intersection.
Okay. What about the sign code variances? What are you asking for there?
So we created this signage package looking at primarily retail tenant signage. Much like at Melody Farm, needing an increase for the retail tenants in terms of the size of the signs, what they're going to be expecting in a property like this. The other, and I don't think we increased, haven't seen it in a bit, but I think it was about a 50% increase in some of the signs.
Do you have the staff report?
Yep.
Well, you do now.
And then the other consideration was for the end cap tenants that are on a corner to allow for signs on both of their facades versus just one facade. We also are looking at a variety of signage that will be building mounted and awning or canopy mounted as well, such that it has some relief. Yeah. So we have blade signs. Which show up here. And then on some of these canopies, we have signage, and others would be surface mount, internally illuminated signage for the shop fronts. We're also asking for open channel letters.
A little more.
I think in these types of environments, the more variety of signage you have, the more authentic the place feels, versus having a criteria where every sign is appearing as though it's the same sign. not it.
Wrong package.
I'll get rid of this. It's not forwarding.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh,
You broke it.
broke it.
We're gonna have to wait here now. Oh, there
There
it
it
goes.
is. So yeah, this exhibit here shows the different types of signage that we're hoping for, and we hope that the tenants express their brand through the signage.
We'll go back that one. Are you suggesting, though, that the retailer, I guess, on the right would have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 signs?
No, these are just different locations that their sign could exist within.
So then when you say to allow more than one wall sign per tenant facade, you're talking about multiple
I'm
signs per facade,
So the tenants that are on the corner of a building,
right?
they would, although their primary entrance is on one side, or they
Right.
may have entrances on both, we're suggesting that they would have a sign on either side.
That,
That was typical at.
but that's one per facade.
One per facade.
But this
yeah.
reads more than one.
Right.
That's what I didn't understand.
Vicky, could you get to the screen that shows where on the facade a sign is permitted to be located?
They have the
And I
elevation.
think I can help out a little here.
In the back, it's
Window.
boxes on the screen.
Yeah,
Is that the storefront?
it may be.
And it's in your packet as well.
Corner,
It's someplace,
the
yeah.
corner unit.
There, it shows, yeah. The pictures are just illustrate what's encouraged and discouraged.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I pass it?
To me, I think we need to flip back.
I'm sorry, Mickey.
21.
Oh,
I can't see the page. Oh, here we go.
There we
18,
go.
19, 20.
there we go.
Okay, can you get a little more of the streetscape involved so we can see more? Okay, each one of those boxes there, that's the specific area where a sign can be located. There can be one sign within those defined locations. So there could be a situation where there's a wall sign outlined in red, and then if they happen to have a canopy sign, there could be signage on that as well. But it's not to say you could have unlimited signs.
Right.
And
So
I
it's
guess-
one sign per defined location. In addition to that, awning sign, a blade sign that would not count toward the overall size limitation because from staff's perspective, we think blade signs are cool. And then there's also some allowances for sandwich board signs
Yeah.
and banner signs and other such temporary signs. But it's not to say you could have that many signs on each tenant elevation.
But if we approve this, are we approving multiple wall signs per facade?
So this example on screen
Uh,
now, R101,
I can answer the question simply. No. It would approve one wall sign per facade, and it could also, in addition to that, not in all cases, it could also approve a blade sign
Right.
and an awning sign.
So,
That's
so
it.
so in the staff report where it says to allow more than one, it's to allow one wall sign per tenant facade is what we should approve.
Yeah, and maybe the wording could have been better on that, Chairman Morris.
Yeah.
But yes, it's to allow more than one sign as part of a facade.
Okay, we never blame staff, it's always the petitioner, so don't worry.
I know, I know. of
But
one
thank you,
exception.
it's a good,
Can you,
yeah.
can you show the other elevation that you
Yeah.
showed? There's one exception,
With the-
where that tall blade sign
With-
is,
Permitted?
there's two on that.
This one?
Yeah, and on the four-story right there.
Actually, this is the residential entrance, and this is a little misleading. This sign here is actually a canopy sign, and then above here is the wall sign, and this is a blade sign.
Right. That was the one that had.
Okay, so we're okay then? Okay,
So, wait, so the retail can have a wall sign on each facade. It can have window signage, it can have a blade sign, It could have canopy signs, both on the canopy and on the front of the canopy. I personally think that's way too much signage for one business.
I'll let the petitioner answer the question, but I'll provide this just for informational purposes. The staff, as part of the review of the sign criteria, we're happy with the way the sign criteria plan worked out for Melody Farm. So we pushed and pulled and tugged them toward that plan and encouraged them to come up with a sign criteria plan that was similar in terms of number and size of signs, and then add into that the particular design requirements for this development. And with that, I'll let the
Yeah,
petitioner.
I'll just say, as the retail developer, the blend of flexibility which the document gives with the actual enforcement by us and by the village of the petitioners of the individual retail businesses is really what makes this work as a document. It's not throwing everything up against the wall. That doesn't serve us and it doesn't serve the village, but allowing the flexibility for the retailers to express themselves in different ways that match the intent of the document is what we're trying to do. We do have a vested interest and a responsibility to sort of adhere to the spirit of the document and not abuse the document.
Okay, as long as that's,
And I mean, if we did what you're suggesting, we would be diminishing the retail space and the multifamily space. The purpose of it is to allow flexibility so that it looks good and not to make everything look the same, but it does require enforcement.
so, but could there be like a maximum number of signs per business?
I'm not sure of the exact wording. You can see that there's about 40 pages of document.
Read it.
I don't have that at the top of my head. Something like that could be considered. I'm not sure that it would have the intended consequence. Sometimes doing that might restrict you from actually having the document be flexible the way it should be. I'm not sure, though, and it's something that we could maybe get back to you on. Okay, thank you.
Mike? At some point, do we need to look at the signage restrictions in the village? This type of development, when those signage requirements were developed, something like this didn't even exist. And I think that, because we frequently talk about signs here, the world has changed. And I don't believe this developer has any intent of making this look like an arcade. But I think when you're walking down Main Street as a shopper, the signage is going to help you figure out where you're going. And I can't believe they would be spending this much money to make it look like, I would like to mention a building at the end of 45, but I don't want to do that, who changed their sign and it looks terrible. But I do think we need to look at signage at some point because it's outdated. Just a
I
thought.
actually agree with you, and I applaud you for, encouraging the blade signs. That's very pedestrian
Oh, God, yes.
friendly and things like that. But, so many aspects of the sign package, I really think are terrific. Yeah, I'm just concerned about
I think the
too many.
other point is the signs ultimately need to be permitted by the village. So although something might match the letter of the law, it might not meet the intent and not get permitted. And it would need to be approved by us as landlord before it got submitted.
I would also add that the nature of this district we're trying to create is, it's a different place than, say, Melody Farm across the street, where you've got 4 and 5 foot letters for the large anchor tenants. These are much smaller retailers and restaurants, so we've tried to do what we feel is appropriate in terms of the size of the sign, so you're not going to get very large signs for these smaller tenants. So we're trying to have it feel comfortable when you walk it, comfortable when you drive it, not overwhelming. So, I think having the flexibility is a good thing.
And I actually appreciate the limitation on the size, because I agree, you don't want something that, you don't want 12-foot high letters.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned on several occasions the opportunity, which is probably more than an opportunity, it's probably the utilization of the outdoor spaces in front of some of these for outdoor dining. Are you asking us, or are we being asked, Mike, to approve a variance for this permitting outdoor dining on this lot? Because is that not something that ordinance permits?
You're not being requested to consider a variation. It's shown just so you could get a full understanding of how they intend to utilize those outdoor spaces. What's in the tenant design guidelines, there's many things that are included there, one of which is that it makes reference to the fact that the village board needs to require a license for outdoor dining and for outdoor merchandise display and sales for each individual tenant. So, and that's what's required by the code. So it's permitted, but you need a license as approved by the board. Variation is not being requested or required.
I guess my question is because of what is being created here by the developer is really almost I don't want to say a new, but for the village, a unique zoning area, but not really a district. I mean, should the PUD just include those things?
Well, I'll speak from this chair at least. We like to look at, it's nice to know where the patios are placed to give the tenants the opportunities to display their merchandise or to have outdoor dining. But each tenant and each location has individual needs and unique impact to that particular area. So some tenants might just want 3 tables, others might want more tables. Some tenants serve alcohol, which means we want barriers, some don't. So we like the opportunity of looking at individual tenants' table placement and merchandise placement so that we could adjust to their particular needs in a way that suits the village's needs.
So, in that thought process, I would be of the opinion that these sandwich sign, A-frame signs, should also be under that approval process. I don't think that we should just give it a blanket on that.
Now that one, unlike the outdoor patio and merchandise display discussion, that one requires a variation from the sign code. So you can make that recommendation to the board as to whether or not you wish to recommend approval of those variations for temporary signage.
Okay. Some number of years ago when the mall did certain upgrading to its entrances, there was a lot of discussion between the village and at that time the development regarding the mall entries, that because for a good portion of the year we don't have the best weather here in Chicago, that they're not covered. And we hear people complaining, I have to have, my husband stand out while I get the car and, get wet. This entry is really far from where a car would be.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
This new mall entry, because of that plaza, is pretty far from where a car would be. Is there any concern that, that presents an issue?
Well, that was a topic that we looked at and we have attempted to address with a drop-off area. We'll pull the proper, maybe the site plan would be the better thing to go to.
Sure.
Or even the lease plan, the retail lease plan shows it. So you can see right here, we've designed in a drop-off area specifically to address that concern. The reality of the geometry of the site definitely highlights what you're talking about. And when we were peer reviewing it with ourselves internally, we brought that up, and this was a late change to our plan to add this so that we could provide better drop-off options for people.
Okay.
Is that the main entry right there?
The entry is right here.
Oh, back there.
And to add to that, where
Still got it.
John's pointing the mouse, here is a covered arcade that people can walk under to get to the entry of the mall.
Okay. And are there awnings or coverings along Main Street on those
There are.
outlets
So
as well? Okay.
From the garage pedestrian exit here, there's an arcade here, and then there's a series of large canopies here. And then in these 2 locations, the building actually comes out over the sidewalk. So it's really not until you get to this point that you're uncovered.
Okay.
So
Good.
we've tried to, that was one of the things we looked at earlier on when we moved the entrance to the garage further to the east, is how to protect folks from the environment.
Okay. The one thing that wasn't mentioned, just so we have it in the record, do you have proposed rentals for these units?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you have proposed rentals, the amounts for these units? For the
Proposed-
residential? The rental
proposed-
amounts?
Rental, oh, I see. The smallest unit would be around $1,700, and then the largest would be $3,200.
Pardon me?
The largest would be $3,200.
What is your target demographic for the residential?
So based on what we've experienced at the Atworth, what we're expecting is about 50-50 split between young professionals and empty nesters.
What about professionals with children? How many children do you anticipate?
Based on the TESCA report, I believe they had projected a certain amount, but I know based on staff's recent calls over to the Atworth and Milton, there were about 3 school-age children each property.
Yeah, that's correct. I think the Atworth maxed out at one point at 5 or 6 kids. That's the most we had.
I think they maxed out at around 10, but then
Okay.
some of them were transfers from other buildings that were already in the school system.
Okay.
So a question for the landlord. So you're doing all this is lovely. I mean, you're creating all this new retail space. How much of your interior residence do you envision vacating the inside of the mall, which obviously has a lot of emptiness right now, and moving into the new, more modern space because for strictly exposure? I mean, to me, it seems like you're going to make it even more barren on the inside of the mall.
That's a great question, and we think that we're going to create synergy by creating new, high-quality space on the outside. There are some tenants that are going to leave, but they would leave anyway. So we're really preserving their occupancy on the campus, and we're going to continue working on redeveloping the inside of the mall to make it more robust. We believe that the addition of multifamily Phase 1, the retail associated with multifamily Phase 1, and hopefully shortly thereafter, multifamily Phase 2 will really activate the campus and lead to additional occupancy inside the mall and also additional redevelopment around the campus. So we think that, you can't fix every problem all at once, but the best way to start fixing the challenge is to invest in it and to create a meaningful place that people want to live at and people want to shop at and dine at, and it will spill into the rest of the property.
Has there been any thought to, because of the wonderful amenities and relationship to dining and shopping, et cetera, to have any of these be age-restricted buildings for more senior housing, so people could move out of big houses into this and have all the amenities in one of these phases?
We have looked at that, and there is obviously an age-restricted project that you all are well aware of, based on our research, and now you're listening to the retail developer, not the multifamily, and you can listen to them as well. One age-restricted project in town is probably what the market will bear in the short term. So it's not a restriction that we would want to put on our Phase 2. It's certainly something that could be evaluated after that other project is absorbed, but maximum flexibility, I think, is the key thing for us.
All right, anybody else? All right, this is a public hearing. Does anyone from the public at this point wish to speak with regard to this development? Okay, then I see no one's rushing to the podium. We can close then the public comment portion. I'll note for the record that notices were sent to surrounding property owners, and we received no comments to that. I also note that as part of our packet, we have the section 18.3 of the zoning ordinance responses from the petitioner, which are also made part of the record. In addition, condition of approval 4 has been modified with the new final plat of subdivision we received this evening. to read that it is consisting of 6 pages, and it is dated October 27, 2020. Otherwise, the other 14 conditions remain unchanged. Okay, any comments by anybody else on the commission?
I have one question.
Sure.
Since this mall site hasn't had any residential on it before, will there be any zones for 24-hour parking at grade associated with these residential units? And I guess my question stems from visitors coming to visit the residents and maybe not parking in the parking structure because those might be assigned spaces. Will there be any zones, or would it be something that they would have to call in and say, this is the license plate of the car that's going to be there, and can it park overnight?
From a practical perspective, the ground level of the parking structure, which is retail parking, is not going to be policed after the retail stores close. I think that it would be very likely for visitors to park in there. And then realistically, the area around it is going to be shared via easements between the multifamily project and the commercial projects. And we certainly wouldn't have a problem in those easements. It's going to allow for cross parking. So I think there's obviously thousands of parking spaces sitting there. There's lots of opportunities.
I'm not worried about the numbers.
Okay.
It's just the 24-hour aspect, overnight.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, there is an opportunity for people to park 24 hours. The residential project will have lighting that will accommodate later night parking. The retail parking lots are lit at 25% after
Not
hours.
worried about the safety.
Yes.
Not worried, just the action, because if somebody was to park overnight, I was just curious if they would get a ticket. You know, if they would
No.
be towed.
No.
Or some other reason.
No. I mean, if there was a problem with the people who were parking, or if it led to a problem, that's something we would discuss with the village. But that would not be something that we would
It would
be
be policed.
adverse to. And look, we are evolving as campus landlords, campus owners, and we want this to be a place where people are comfortable living, not, uptight that their, aunt is staying over and might get towed. I mean, that would be really counterproductive for the multifamily
I
project.
think that kind of helps satisfy some of your concern about the 1.5 versus,
Yeah.
that's where that was going.
Okay, I mean, and look, it's just something that we've been dealing with around the country. It's a topic that's talked about a lot on mall redevelopments. There's a ton of parking. How do we use the parking more efficiently? And sharing it between different uses is definitely a step in that direction. And we see it as a positive for the campus.
I'm just focused on whether you're going to get a ticket if you're parking for 24 hours.
No ticket.
Okay. While you're there, Lot 1, 2, and 3, which is on our new re-subdivision of it, are those going to remain under the ownership of the mall owner, whatever entity that is? Or are
We
you
need to
selling those
look
off?
at the lots in order to answer the question. There's a different owners, all of which are going to involve the company I work for, Centennial Real Estate. The multifamily project, which is being developed by Focus and Atlantic, will be owned in a partnership between Focus Atlantic and Centennial.
The building or the lot?
The lot, this is a complicated question.
Where I'm ultimately going is, are we going to ultimately have to reach the point where there'll be some sort of common area maintenance agreement between all these entities?
Yes.
Whatever these entities are.
We are working on that agreement, and we need that agreement. And one thing that I'll tell you is the company I work for is in the middle of every agreement. We are part owner of every lot other than the Macy's and the J.C. Penney lot on the campus. We bought the Sears and we bought the Carson, so we control all of the action on 1, 2, and 3 that you're referring to. And we are, in essence, entering into easements with the other partnerships that we're a part of.
Okay.
So yes, we do need easements. There are controls that need to be put in place, business arrangements in terms of ongoing maintenance. the fees associated with those maintenance and the upkeep of the property, along with parking. The rules that will govern the parking, rules that govern the utilities, the maintenance of those utilities, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
The only other comment is, I was asking about the walkways from the AMC Theater down to the main mall entrance on Main Street now. And I just feel that it was, I'm always a sucker for water features, and I kind of thought that would be a great place to have had put a waterfall type feature in there. But that's just my feeling on that. The other thing I wanted to make a comment on, I know we're looking for preliminary and final plan approvals on both Phase 1 and Phase 2, and I thought it might be worth a suggestion just to do a preliminary on Phase 2, in case we find out after Phase 1 we don't like something, we can adjust it.
From staff's perspective, Phase 1 and Phase 2 need to relate to each other, and we would prefer that that design get locked in tonight. And so if you have any reservations, speak up about it, but we would prefer both phases get locked in for approval tonight.
My reservation is still with the parking issues. I'm not sure that I can trust the studies that are being performed, especially after we got bit by Melody Farms. So I'm kind of leery of that. So I thought holding off on Phase 2 for a final would help solve that.
Okay. Anybody else? Mark? Oh. My only comment, I have two comments. The first comment is, I think this is a great development, and I think it's going to certainly re-energize a mall that had great glory at one time and then regrettably fell somewhat. And I think it's an exciting development for the village, and it provides something that we don't really have, and I don't think is in Lake County at all. That's number one. Number two is something that probably is more internally facing than at you. I'm still troubled by the fact that we have elements of our code that are requiring or a request by petitioners to have such substantial deviations, and which should come first. Should we allow substantial deviations, or should we look at our code and then comply with what would be a more revised code? Here it doesn't bother me as much as it does in some other times, because this is really, for lack of a better way to put it, it's a planned unit development, which is almost a separate zoning district the way it's going to be ending up. So I'm not quite as concerned. But I do have this issue with, which comes first. And I think what really should come first is we should look at our code and fix it, because it seems to be broken by what everybody's telling us. Now, we may determine that that's not the case, and then shame on us for approving all these things. But my guess is we're not going to reach that issue. And that's with dwelling unit size, with parking, and things such as that. So, but like I said, I think it's a great project. I really like it. I think it'll be wonderful. Too bad it'll take 2 years to build, but it's just the way it is, So, anybody else? Yep.
Just, talking about our zoning code, I do think that the numbers and requirements are antiquated for what's going on in market rate housing around the country. And, the parking ratios, dwelling unit size, the heights, some of the setbacks. I think all that probably needs to be looked at internally.
Yeah, thank you. And similar comments came up from a previous hearing last week. I've already had that discussion with the village attorney, and the thoughts were preliminarily, the thoughts we're putting together, just to let you all know, is that we and this is part of a budget cycle as well, is we think we need to engage with a consultant to help us review the entire zoning code, not only the items that are being discussed tonight, but the entire zoning code. There's other areas of the code that we think could use some review and updating to current standards. So your comments are very well taken, and we do tend to move toward a complete review of our zoning code.
Okay. Anybody else?
Some of the,
Jim?
you referred into the packet that you were offering 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, a few 3 bedrooms, and studio. But when I looked at the floor plans, did you have studios in there?
We do.
They don't really look like studios. They look like 1 bedrooms. They look like small one-bedrooms, actually.
So it does have a bedroom in it?
Kinda, yeah.
Not sure where to,
If you only had your own Vicky. I can't help you the way you help me.
thank. Are you looking for the location or the layout of the unit?
The layout.
Okay. I know exactly where that is.
Oh, it's not all open, it does look like a room.
It looks like a one-bedroom.
Okay, I was thinking that was a one-bedroom, okay.
No, yeah.
Okay.
It's a half-height wall.
Right. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we have a standing motion to recommend approval on this commission. So we would have a motion, but before we do that, let me just ask the commission very briefly. Do we have from a straw poll perspective, any consensus with respect to phase 2, whether it should be preliminary or preliminary and final? I know Jim says preliminary.
I think it should be both, preliminary and final for both.
I think that it should be as one.
Yep.
Okay. All right, okay. So we have a motion to recommend approval to amend ordinance 2013-14 as amended, authorizing revisions to a special use permit, granting a planned unit development to allow for a mixed-use residential development, subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, which are conditions 1 through 15, with the revision to condition 4, with the updated site plan, or, I'm sorry, plat of subdivision. We need a second for that.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we need a roll call.
Commissioners Heidner,
Yes.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Gorig,
Yes.
Baloo,
Yes.
Cotton,
Yes.
Hesner,
Yes.
Chairman Morris.
Yes. Next, we have a motion to recommend approval of ordinance 2013-14 as amended, granting certain variations relating to the zoning ordinance and sign code listed in Exhibit A and subject to the 15 conditions, including revised condition 4 and the revision to the request to allow one wall sign per tenant facade, not more than one. Okay, we need a second for that.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
The only comment I add on that is I prefer that the village have approval over those A-frame signs, but I'm not going to vote against it for that reason.
Okay. All right, we need a roll call?
Commissioners Baloo,
Yes.
Cotton,
Yes.
Hesner,
Yes.
Heidner,
Yes.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Gorig,
Yes.
Chairman Morris.
Yes. Next, we have a motion to recommend approval to amend ordinance 2013-13 as amended, granting preliminary and final site plan approval, subject to the conditions of approval referenced in our packet 1 through 15. We need a second for that.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we need a roll call.
Commissioners Hesner,
Yes.
Heidner,
No.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Gorig,
Yes.
Baloo,
Yes.
Cotton,
Yes.
Chairman Morris.
Yes. Next, we have a motion to recommend approval to amend ordinance 2013-13 as amended, granting preliminary and final landscape approval, subject to the conditions referenced herein, which are staff conditions 1 through 15 and 4 as revised. We need a second.
Second.
Stereo.
Okay. We need a roll call. Or any
Commissioner,
discussion first? I'm sorry. Okay, now we need a roll call.
Commissioners Baloo,
Yes.
Cotton,
Yes.
Hesner,
Yes.
Heidner,
Yes.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Gorig,
Yes.
Chairman Morris.
Yes. Next, we have a motion to recommend approval to amend ordinance 2013-13 as amended, granting preliminary and final architectural approval, subject to conditions of approval in the staff report with revised condition of approval 4. And we need a second for that.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. So I'm just going to go back to my bridge. It's a great opportunity. It's an incredible feature. I would just really like to see something a little bit more articulated and how it's connected to the building. And that was just a suggestion to work with staff on just making it really special.
Okay. Need a roll call?
Commissioners Hesner,
Yes.
Heidner,
Yes.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Gorig,
Yes.
Baloo,
Yes.
Cotton,
Yes.
Chairman Morris.
Yes. And lastly, we have a motion to recommend approval to amend ordinance 2013-14 as amended, granting preliminary and final approval of the plat of subdivision, subject to the conditions of approval referenced herein, which include the revised condition 4, therefore referencing the new plat of subdivision we received this evening. And we need a second for that.
Second.
Any discussion? Right, we need a roll call.
Commissioners Hesner,
Yes.
Heidner,
No.
Mulcrone,
Yes.
Gorig,
Yes.
Baloo,
Yes.
Cotton,
Yes.
Chairman Morris.
Yes. And I think that's it unless we've missed something.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Next, is there anything on development review we should or need to discuss?
We just have one more item coming up this year, and it's a request for a zoning map amendment to put zoning in place for a proposed church at 870 West End Court. That would be on November 11th. It's West End Court. It actually fronts on Butterfield Road on the east side, just north of Town Line. Went to the board for concept presentation. It received positive reviews, so it was forwarded to Planning and Zoning for further consideration.
Okay.
And that's all we have on track for this year.
All right. So we have a motion to adjourn. We need a second. We do that by acclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. Good night.
Thank you.